Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
We'll reconvene our meeting. We do not need to call the roll, but if everyone could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
Liberty, justice for all.
I always get ahead because Brian Smith says it so fast.
We're at number 3. Dr. Kunkel, could you please, I'm sorry, we're number 4. Could you please review the agenda?
Yes, sir. A couple highlights from tonight's agenda. I'm asking the board to approve a consultant contract. Item number 2, there are the high school graduates before you for approval. Item 3, we have the school fees set for next year. Asking for your approval. There are some personnel items, and then finally, the highlight would be the 5-year forecast leading into the next 5 years.
And just to be clear on the schedules, these are the ones you
Yes.
had in the work session. These are the updated schedules, and the asterisks are next to the new.
Correct, and those are also on board docs. So if there's
Okay,
an
perfect.
asterisk by their name,
Perfect.
that's a late add.
Gotcha.
After our packet.
That is
After
correct,
that,
yes, yes.
Okay. Does anybody want to isolate or pull an item for a vote before we approve the agenda?
Late, item A.
Item A, board minutes?
I'm sorry, the consultant contract. Sorry, subject.
7A.
8A.
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 And Mr. Van Winkle, I have one other correction.
Yep.
Since
Okay.
Mrs. Hayes is
Only
not,
7 on mine.
I have 7 as public comments and 8 as superintendent. Is that what you guys
Correct.
have?
Yep.
Mrs. Logan?
That's not the way it's on board docs.
I have 6 public comment and 7 superintendent. 1 board docs, but
We're missing something then.
Okay, let's go through these. So,
4 is review the agenda, 5 is approval of the agenda. I'm not looking at what you're looking at, Keith, but do you see approval of the agenda?
See approval of
Okay, and
agenda.
then 6 is the minutes?
Correction minutes, 6.
The
That's
minutes
what
of,
that's what's missing on mine.
Okay.
Minutes.
okay,
I've got that.
7.
I mean, that's the public view of board docs is what I'm on.
yeah, I don't think I've ever looked at that, so,
we'll get it corrected.
okay,
If
perfect.
we all had computers, we could look at
Yeah.
it live.
We'll get it corrected.
I'm old school, I like the
So,
papers.
under superintendent's
Yep.
approval, since Mrs. Hayes is not here, Schedule F does not need to be a separate vote.
Okay,
So when we get to that section, A, B, C, D, and F will be blocked together. We do not.
okay, perfect, yep.
Do not need a separate vote. Okay, with that being said, item B is the Ross High School graduates for your approval. Item C, this is the approval of payments in lieu of for parents that transport their own students to school. That's B and C. Item D, these are the school fees for next school year. Item E is a reduction in force. Item F, personnel schedules, and again, A, B, C, D, and F together. So I'm asking the board to block B through F as one vote.
Okay, hold that ask. Before we go to that, can I get a first to approve the minutes, A and B, under the minutes? Can we get a first for that, please?
Motion.
Mr. Chanel, can we get a second?
Second.
Mrs. Webb? Mrs. Logan, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Schnell,
Yes.
Mrs. Webb,
Yes.
Mr. Kleinfelter,
Yes.
Mr. Van Winkle.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to superintendent's recommendations and reports. We have item A. Can I get a first for item A, please?
Motion.
Mr. Chanel? I will second it. Mrs. Logan, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Schnell,
Yes.
Mr. Van Winkle,
Yes.
Mr. Kleinfelter,
Yes.
Mrs. Webb.
No.
And we'll move on to the recommendation by Dr. Kunkel, which is B through F, under superintendent's reports and recommendations. Could we have a first, please?
Motion.
Mr. Chanel, can we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Kleinfelder? Mrs. Logan, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Schnell,
Yes.
Mr. Kleinfelter,
Yes.
Mrs. Webb,
Yes.
and Mr. Van Winkle.
Yes. We'll move on to treasurer's reports and recommendations. The floor is yours, Mrs. Logan.
So under treasurer's reports and recommendations, this time we have the typical investments and treasurer's reports, which is your monthly report, as well as your cash summary report. We do have one donation, which is from Otsuka Pharmaceuticals for the Noah Fisher Scholarship for $3,000 that we need you to approve. And then the district 5-year forecast that we reviewed. And I'm asking you to approve A through D.
A through D. Can we have a first under treasurer's reports and recommendations for items A through D? A first, please.
Motion.
Mr. Chanel, a second.
Second.
Mrs. Webb. Mrs. Logan, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Schnell,
Yes.
Mrs. Webb,
Yes.
Mr. Kleinfelter,
Yes.
Mr. Van Winkle.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I didn't ask at the beginning officially, but Mr. Castater, do we have any public participation? No? Okay. We'll move on to item, I don't know what number it is, so we do not have a legislative report tonight, but we do have a Butler Tech report, which is Mr. Kleinfelter.
All right, I'm going to be fairly brief. Just a couple of things. On Monday night, they had, Butler Tech had their senior ceremony, honoring 648 seniors graduating or getting their certificates from Butler Tech. They graduate from the regular high school at the Cintas Center, packed house, lovely event. 2 hours and 15 minutes to get all 600 and some through. Very efficient. Kathy DeBlasi did a great job with that. That'll be her last graduation.
Really?
I pity the person that gets stuck with that job after her. But,
Mrs. Webb. Oh, sorry.
just one item of note, I asked Paul, they did their 5-year forecast as well. I asked Paul what they did. They assumed a 24% increase for their assumption, and Paul's pretty conservative, so I thought that was pretty good. They are also trying their best to fill. They turn away about 1,000 students every year based on numbers, so they're going to do a big expansion at the Middletown Airport. They actually got some grant money from the state of Ohio to add on to the airport and build a hangar and an airframe and power plant classrooms so that they will, aviation is one of the industries in the country that is hurting for jobs, and students can go there and get airframe technician, air power plant certified by the FFA and FAA, not FFA. Two different, very different things. The FAA, and they're looking at doing that. They also are partnering, expanding a manufacturing program at Hamilton with Miami University's campus. And they're going to do a 5,800 square foot expansion of the biomedical campus. Cincinnati State's going to partner with them and possibly give them a bachelor's of nursing. Kids will be able to go there and earn their bachelor's of nursing right as they get out of high school. So looking at, with those 3 program additions, not up for next year, but probably the following year, you're looking at adding about 1,000 seats to Butler's Tech's campuses. And that'll be a good thing for us because that's more opportunities for our kids to get in that. I also have a copy of the Student Success program that I passed out to everybody. Think about this, we're at board meeting Tuesday night. They got all these graduation photos and stuff in here the very next day when they do this. Like, I don't know who prints this for them, but that's pretty impressive that they got that.
It was the night before.
Yeah, it was the night before, so less than
Monday night.
one day turnaround on that. So that's for your reading, and that's all I have.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Kleinfelder regarding Butler Tech report? Nope. Okay, we'll go around the table. Board comments, we'll start with Mrs. Webb.
So I'll be short and sweet. I just want to congratulate the class of 2023. We're just about through, made it to the finish line. I'm excited about graduation next week. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in their caps and gowns. That's always an exciting night, so super excited. I want to thank all the staff as well for completing another year, and just wish everybody a great summer.
Mr. Chanel?
No additional comments. Second everything Amy just said, so.
Mr. Kleinfelder?
Second what Amy says, third it, I guess.
Okay.
Hope everybody has a great summer. Graduates, it's always one of my favorite times of year. I can't remember how many graduations I've been to, but it's been a bunch, and every one of them was a pretty neat experience, and look forward to sitting on the stage and hearing Mr. Van Winkle speech.
Yeah. And that's next Thursday, right?
It is, yes.
Okay, just wanted to, during the work session, we had some presentations today. The RMS students, Girl Scout presentation, the RIS presentation, and then Mrs. Logan, thank you for the details on the 5-year forecast. And as always, if people have any questions regarding the 5-year forecast,
2%.
please contact Mrs. Logan or Mr. Castater via email, and they will get back with you and answer your questions. With that being said, can we have a motion to go in executive session with no action to follow? The purpose is to prepare for, conduct, or review negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation terms and conditions of their employment. Can we have a first?
Motion.
Mr. Chanel, can we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Kleinfelder. Mrs. Logan, could you call the roll?
Mr. Schnell?
Yes.
Mr. Kleinfelter?
Yes.
Mrs. Webb?
Yes.
Mr. Van Winkle?
Yes, thank you.
Can you second something?